Hello James Bond fans and welcome to my latest 007 movie review, where today I review the 9th film in the James Bond franchise, which is the second adventure to star Roger Moore as 007, the man with the golden gun, directed by Guy Hamilton. And, fun fact, this would actually be the last Bond movie to be directed by Guy Hamilton. Sad face. It would also be the very last movie that Harry Seltzman would produce as well. Again, sad face. Nevertheless, let's get on with it. The Man with the Golden Gun. The plot of this film is James Bond is targeted by the world's most expensive assassin while he attempts to recover sensitive solar cell technology that is being sold to the highest bidder. There we go, that's essentially the plot of The Man with the Golden Gun. Okay, The Man with the Golden Gun. The second film to star Roger Moore. How is it? Well, I don't think it's quite as good as Live and Let Die. However, I really enjoyed this one. A lot more than I expected. I kind of hear mostly that this film is ranked very low on most people's lists. It's considered to be one of the weakest installments of the franchise, which I think is a little unfair, really. I mean, it isn't perfect, it really isn't perfect, but I really enjoyed this film for what it was, and it was just fun. It was a fun movie. Again, it's not quite as polished as Live and Let Die, but it's still a lot of fun. First thing to say is Roger Moore is Bond in this movie. This is quite possibly my favourite performance from Roger Moore as Bond. He's so good in this movie. The reason being, he's tough. Bond is now tough in this movie. I mean, this is actually quite a personal story for Bond in this film, and Roger Moore did a great job at displaying that, how Bond was almost compromised by that. He was emotionally affected by the fact that his life was on the line. He's a lot more forceful with the women. Like, there's a scene when he's slapping Andrea in the hotel room. And she's like, "Oh, you're hurting my arm. I'll break it if you don't tell me where those bullets go." So he's definitely a lot more aggressive in this movie. And I like the fact that Roger Moore is toughening up. I think it works. Also, you've got Christopher Lee as Scaramanga. Christopher Lee is fantastic, and he is definitely one of the best villains of the franchise. He plays the role with such an intimidating vibe. I mean, from the very first scene in the funhouse, you get the sense that this guy is not to be messed with. He's actually very scary. Very scary. Especially in those scenes when he's intimidating Andrea, like when he gets his golden gun out and starts kind of rubbing it over her, feeling her up a bit with it. That's really quite creepy. Also the scene when he does encounter Bond and Bond is having Bond and Goodnight having dinner with him. This is like every great artist. I want to create an indisputable masterpiece. I love the way Lee delivers his dialogue. Also the scene when he kills High Fat. That was generally quite a chilling sequence. And Scaramanga and Bond have that great final confrontation on the island. I'll talk about that more in a bit, but I love Christopher Lee in this movie. He's definitely one of the best villains of the series. You also have Hervé Villechaize as Knick-Knack, the midget henchman, or midget butler to Scaramanga. He's quite amusing, especially towards the end when him and Bond have a fight on the boat. I do like that. It's quite amusing. And he's like, get off of me, you big bully, Monsieur Scaramanga. He's French, and sometimes you hear his voice over the megaphone in the funhouse. He's quite creepy as well. And he's one of the best henchmen of the series. I very much like him. How he's always got that evil sort of smile on him, like Monsieur Scaramanga. The Bond girls. The Bond girls are pretty good. I think Andrea is a very sympathetic character, and I really feel for her. The fact that she's in this horrible situation with a man who is a deadly assassin who could kill her at any moment, and she's, well, tied to him, really. I mean, they're not married as such, but they're certainly boyfriend and girlfriend. She's desperately scared, and she goes running to Bond to seek some help. I mean, it is, I guess I could understand if people were a bit uncomfortable watching the scene when she gets slapped around, given the way the film treats her, but it was a good way of showing how Roger Moore could be a bit tougher as Bond. But I can understand that scene being a bit uneasy for some people. I like the way Andrea dies. It's tragic, it's sudden. The fact that Bond just sits down next to her and he's asking her a question and she's just sat still like this, and until he notices the shot, you know, the gunshot there. That's generally quite a bone-chilling sequence, actually. The other Bond girl we have is Mary Goodnight, played by Britt Ekland. Mary Goodnight is definitely the weaker of the two Bond girls. She's okay, but she's definitely playing a sort of more of a ditz. She's not the sharpest tool in the shed. She's kind of a lousy agent. She's a bit like Rosie Carver, although she's a bit better than Rosie. She is smoking hot though, especially in that bikini. I can't deny that was a very nice thing to watch. Although it is a bit confusing how in that dinner scene with Bond, she turns him down. She says no to having sex with him, and then the scene afterwards, when he comes into the hotel room, she's like, "Oh yes, James." Like, what? What suddenly changed her mind? It's a little bit unclear, really. I don't really get that. Also, the return of Sheriff Pepper. Clifton James is a funny man, and he is funny in this movie. However, he's overused. Like, I don't really see the point of him being in it. Don't get me wrong, I mean, the attempts at comedy in Live and Let Die were a lot better than the ones here. In Live and Let Die, he was actually out working with the police force, and that made more sense. With this, he's vacaying in what happens to be, ironically, the same area where Bond is working. Convenient. The humour is just really cringy with Pepper. The fact that he gets knocked into the river by the elephant. The fact that he actually gets into the car with Bond after they drive it out of the rental area. And then the car does that stunt with the slide whistle. The slide whistle itself is kind of unnecessary, but the stunt is really cool. But the fact that Sheriff Pepper's there is kind of pointless. He adds nothing to the story, so they didn't need to have him in this movie. He was a cool character for Live and Let Die. Okay, in Live and Let Die, I'd let you get away with it. You can have him in there for the one movie, but in this one, don't bring Sheriff Pepper into this one. He doesn't need to be there. We also got High, Fat and Hip. They are good supporting characters. The MI6 regulars are very good in this film. I have to apologise, I forgot to mention in my Live and Let Die review that Desmond Llewelyn is not actually in it. He took a one-film break after Diamonds Are Forever. He had Live and Let Die off, and now he's back in this movie, and he's great. It's always great to see Desmond come back, and there's that scene when M is always talking him down. Q's trying to explain the technology behind his inventions, and M's like, "Oh no, stupid Q, don't do it." M's a lot more cross in this movie. I think because he's worried that if he loses his top agent, then hell's gonna break loose. So, the Bond and Moneypenny scene is not very good in this film. It's too direct. It doesn't have any of the magic, any of the flair that we've had in the previous movies. Even though in Live and Let Die, the scene between Bond and Moneypenny wasn't much, and I'm sorry I didn't mention it last time, it still was more than this. With this, he's like, "Oh, Moneypenny, you're better than a computer." The way he says it is like he's saying it to her in a condescending way, so it doesn't really make sense. It's a bit forceful. I get that Bond is under pressure in this movie. I get that he's under pressure, and I get that he just wants to find answers, but you could have stopped to have that brief moment with Moneypenny. Like, it just felt a bit too serious for me, that scene. There is that great moment when Bond goes into the belly dancing club, and he goes into the dressing room of the belly dancer because she has the golden bullet in her belly button, and he's like feeling her up. He's trying to seduce her just to get the bullet out of her stomach and out of her belly button. Sorry, you really do have a magnificent abdomen. So Roger Moore's still the smoothest Bond for me. He's still very smooth with the ladies, and there's a great fight that breaks out. The action in this movie is kind of hit and miss, really. I like it for the most part, but I kind of wish there was more action. There's not a huge amount of action. The best action scene in the movie for me is that action fight in the dressing room, which is really well choreographed. Stuff at the karate school, you didn't really need that. It didn't add anything to the story. I would have just cut it out. It was an excuse to have an action scene. And, I mean, yeah, it's well choreographed, but to me it's weightless. It was weightless action. Also, the third act of the movie is kind of rushed. The final confrontation in the funhouse is good, and it's definitely tension-filled with Bond and Scaramanga. However, the actual bits afterwards, after Scaramanga dies, finding the Solex device, it's just done too easily and too quickly. There's a lack of tension in that scene, and it doesn't help that Goodnight is being a fucking dimwit. There's some good car chases. However, the film does slow down a little bit in the second act. I do feel the film drags slightly. Not too much, but just slightly. And it would have been nice if they tightened up the pacing, get rid of the karate school scene, because that didn't need to be in the movie. The music score by John Barry definitely goes back to a more rambunctious kind of what you would expect from a Bond movie. Live and Let Die moved away from that with the kind of voodoo feel, and it did change the the score slightly, and obviously George R. Martin composed the previous score. John Barry comes back and he delivers us what you would want from a Bond score. I mean, this is definitely an improvement over his score for Diamonds Are Forever. Also, the title song by Lulu, I like it actually. A lot of people dismiss it. They think the lyrics don't make any sense. I don't understand why they say that, because I think the lyrics make perfect sense. And it's groovy. I think it's groovy. It's just a groovy song. It's a belter. It's not the best Bond theme ever, but it doesn't have to be. It's a great... It's not a ballad or anything. It's just a groovy 70s song. The title sequence is pretty good, although it doesn't relate to the movie very much. It's just loads of beautiful women and a golden gun. But it's basic. It's one of the more basic title sequences, but it'll do. I'll give it a pass. Also, the fact that Scaramanga has a third nipple is kind of a hilarious character trait, really, and something that it still makes me laugh to this day, and it's just hilarious. I love Scaramanga's Island and the funhouse, the way that looks. The pre-title sequence of the movie, when that man who was also in Diamonds Are Forever comes back in this movie. I don't think he's playing the same character, but he comes back and he gets killed inside the funhouse. That was a really good tension-filled opening, actually. That was a very well done sequence, which is a kind of a juxtaposition for the usual action-packed sequences that we normally get for a Bond movie before the titles. Overall, The Man with the Golden Gun, I really like it. It's a solid Bond movie. It's not perfect. There are some issues with it, but it's good fun. I really enjoy it, and I think Roger Moore proved himself in this movie. He proved that he could play James Bond, and he could play him tougher. Not in the same vein as Connery. Like he's not trying to copy Sean Connery, but in this one he proves that he's tough when he needs to be, and this could quite possibly be Roger Moore's best performance. And we also get to hear a little bit of his American accent, actually, just before Pepper and Bond are about to drive over the bridge to do the slide whistle stunt. Pepper goes, "You're not gonna," and he goes, "I sure am, boy." There's also parts of the humour that don't always land, like that boy who's trying to sell everyone the elephant. Like, what the hell was that? That didn't need to be there. I don't mind some of the more over-the-top elements, but that was just, like, random. It's got to make sense for it to work, really, and it doesn't. So the final scene on the boat is quite amusing. After they get rid of Knick Knack, Bond and Goodnight are well, doing what you would think Bond would normally do. And M rings him. He says, "Where's Goodnight? I want to speak to Goodnight." He's like, "She is just coming, sir." Of course, that's a little bit of innuendo there. Then in the end, he just hangs up and he goes, "Good night, sir." So, The Man with the Golden Gun, it's fun, it's cheesy, it's Bond. And I think there's a lot of great spectacle with it. It's not perfect, but it's a pretty good follow-up to Live and Let Die. But it's not my favourite of the Roger Moore movies, but I would consider it as one of the higher ranked ones. And I would definitely go back to it for many reasons, Christopher Lee being one of them. So on an overall score, I would give The Man with the Golden Gun an 8 out of 10. So, that's it. That's my review of The Man with the Golden Gun. Please leave your comments down below, let me know what you think of this movie, and stay tuned next time when we review Roger Moore's third outing as Bond, which is also the 10th Bond movie, which would see the director Lewis Gilbert return at the helm. And also John Barry would take a break in the next movie, and we would get Marvin Hamlish to do the score next time. So, next time on Bond Movie Review, Spy Who Loved Me. So, until next time, thank you guys all for watching, and as always, I'm Mr. Titus11. See ya.